Welcome to another episode of Sounds Reasonable. I'm your host, Dr. Brad, and I'm joined in the production of our weekly show by Tim and Tate. Tim and I are members of the free thought community, and Tate is an excellent skeptic.
That I am.
Remember, our Sounds Reasonable website can be found on Facebook. Do you experience frequent irrational thoughts, a pervasive belief in a divine skydance, an insatiable urge to read horoscopes, perform spells, speak in tongues, or pray? Fortunately, you are now listening to the cure for these ailments. Sounds Reasonable. This show is dedicated to bringing you, the listener, the latest news in free thought, science, logic and reason, and politics and religion. And of course, we encourage you to share your thoughts with us after each episode by posting comments and asking questions on our Facebook page. What is free thought? What does it mean to be a free thinker? The dictionary definition is a person who forms opinions about religion based on reason, independent of tradition, authority, or established belief. Here's Christopher Hitchens' working definition. Our belief is not a belief. Our principles are not a faith. We do not rely solely upon science and reason because these are necessary rather than sufficient factors. But we distrust anything that contradicts science or outrages reason. We may differ on many things, but what we respect is free inquiry, open-mindedness, and the pursuit of ideas for their own sake. We'll now move on to our science news segment, and remember that the scientific mind is one that allows its perceptions of reality to be constrained by good evidence and good argument. Now, hepatitis literally means inflammation of the liver. The classic symptom of hepatitis is jaundice, a yellowing of the skin and eyes caused by too much bilirubin in the blood. Viral hepatitis is one of the most important public health threats worldwide, and currently there are at least 8 different types of hepatitis viruses that have clearly been identified. The 3 most common types are simply called hepatitis viruses A, B, and C. So Tim, if I could have that first figure, please.
You bet.
So this figure simply compares transmission, epidemiology, and prevention and treatment of the 3 main viral types. Again, hepatitis A, B, and C. So hepatitis A, its transmission consists of ingesting contaminated food and water. And this is typically referred to as infectious hepatitis. This is most commonly now in this country anyway, transmitted in daycare facilities. Its epidemiology, it's estimated about 2,800 cases occurred in the US in 2015. And again, that number is of course a little dated, but that's been a rather steady number for many years. And its prevention is simply by improving hygiene, and there is an excellent vaccine against it. I've had that vaccination. And treatment, it says no available treatment, but if they mean after you get it, I would agree with that. If they mean after exposure, however, you can be passively immunized against hepatitis A. I know that because I was. I had been exposed to a fellow whose young son had contracted it in daycare. And as a result, they gave me passive immunization with anti-hepatitis A immunoglobulin. Hepatitis B virus. This is spread by contact with infected body fluids, most typically contaminated blood products. You can also have mother-to-child transmission, or in the case of contaminated organs, you could have transfer that way in the case of an organ transplant. Now, the major problem with hepatitis B is that it forms a chronic infection. That is, you can acquire the infection and literally can never clear it. So there's about 300 million chronic carriers in the world. And the major problems with that, besides being able to continue to spread the virus, is it can lead to cirrhosis and cancer of the liver. The vaccine is very effective. About 95% of those that receive the vaccination will be protected for life. I've also had that vaccine, so far so good anyway. And treatment, there are treatments available for hepatitis B, so you can use nucleoside analogs or pegylated interferon. Hepatitis C virus, and that's going to be the subject of our science news today. Hepatitis C virus is transmitted via IV drug use or poorly sterilized medical equipment, but can also be transferred by a blood transfusion and organ transplant. And again, we have a similar problem with hepatitis C that we do with hepatitis B, in that it leads to chronic infection. And it's estimated that there are about 400 million chronic carriers in the world. And again, the same problems in terms of liver cirrhosis and cancer can result. Prevention for hepatitis C, blood screening, make sure that needles used for injections are sterile, and sanitary healthcare settings. And treatment, here's where a major advance in treating the hepatitis viruses has occurred, and that's been with hepatitis C. There are now very good antiviral agents that can literally eliminate hepatitis C virus infections now. And in fact, you'll see them advertised on TV every once in a while. So anyway, good news for hepatitis C. Okay, Tim, thank you. Now, the Nobel Prize in Physiology and Medicine this year was awarded to 3 scientists who discovered and conducted research on hepatitis C virus. So, Tim, if I could have the next figure, please. So here are the 3 scientists that won the Nobel Prize for this work. And I apologize, I don't have their names underneath the figure, so I'll just have to read those. Harvey Alter is on the left. Then Charles Rice is in the middle. And Michael Houghton is on the right. Okay, and then if I could go to the last figure, please, Tim. And so this is an electron micrograph of the hepatitis C virus. Doesn't look like much via EM, but there it is, and it's a dangerous little beast. So it doesn't look like much, but boy, can it cause us all kinds of trouble. Okay, thank you, Tim. So the science news segment I'm going to relay is entitled "Virologists Who Discovered Hepatitis C Win Medicine Nobel." And Harvey Alter, Michael Houghton, and Charles Rice share the award for research on a virus that causes hundreds of thousands of deaths a year. Now, a trio of scientists who identified and characterized the virus responsible for many cases of hepatitis and liver disease, hepatitis C, are the recipients of the 2020 Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine. The winners again are Harvey Alter at the U.S. National Institutes of Health, Michael Houghton, now at University of Alberta in Canada, and Charles Rice, now at Rockefeller University in New York. Again, their work on hepatitis C virus paved the way for effective treatments against the infection that are now available. The World Health Organization estimates that 71 million people worldwide are chronically infected with hepatitis C, which causes nearly 400,000 deaths per year, mostly from cirrhosis and liver cancer. The prize is well deserved, says Ellie Barnes, who studied liver medicine and immunology at the University of Oxford. It stands out as an emblem of great science, she says. We've got to a point where we can cure most people who are infected. And again, I mentioned that earlier that we've been very successful in the development of antiviral drugs for hepatitis C. The prize winners will share an award of 10 million kroner. How's your currency conversion these days, guys? 10 million kroner equals $1.1 million. Now, it's a bloodborne pathogen. In the 1970s, Alter studied the transmission of hepatitis or liver inflammation as a result of blood transfusions. Earlier work had identified hepatitis A and B viruses, but Alter showed that a third blood-borne viral pathogen could transmit the disease to chimpanzees. Now, back when I was in graduate school, which was starting in '79, they were in very extensive search of what they called the non-A, non-B hepatitis virus. So they hadn't even called it hepatitis C yet. Houghton, then working at Chiron Corporation of Emeryville, California, and his colleagues identified the virus on the basis of genetic material from infected chimpanzees, showing that it was a new kind of RNA virus that belonged to the flavivirus family. At this point, they then named it hepatitis C. A team led by Rice, then based at Washington University in St. Louis, used genetic engineering techniques to characterize a portion of the hepatitis C genome responsible for viral replication, demonstrating its role in causing liver disease. At a press conference, Alter noted that it took researchers at Chiron 6 years to clone a tiny fragment of the hepatitis C viral genome, and expressed doubt about whether such painstaking research could be carried out today. Nowadays, if you don't have an immediate endpoint, it's hard to get funding, he said. And it's much more difficult for people now, especially young people, to pursue research. I think the dynamic has to change a little bit. And when we wrap up the story, I want to come back to that point. So remind me of that, guys, if I forget. Some researchers had considered virologist Rolf Bartenschlager at the University of Heidelberg in Germany, a candidate for a Nobel Prize for hepatitis C because of his research into ways of propagating the pathogen in the laboratory. But Bartenschlager says that the Nobel Committee made a reasonable choice. It's a really difficult decision, he says. I think the way they have approached it is fairly well understandable. In the past, Houghton has been a vocal critic of scientific prizes that limit the number of recipients. The maximum number of awardees for a single Nobel Prize is 3. In 2013, he declined the prestigious Canada Gardner Award, which came with a Canadian 100,000, which is equivalent of US 75,000 prize. Because the award did not recognize his collaborators, Q Lim Chu and George Kuehl at Chiron. So very, very noble of him to do that, of course, turn down the prize. He always wants to see his discovery as a team approach, says Thomas Baumert, a virologist and hepatologist at the University of Strasbourg in France. Houghton says that he had hoped to convince the Gardner Foundation to expand the prize list to include his collaborators, but discussions with the foundation became heated, and Houghton decided that he did not want the prize. The Nobel Prize, he says, is a different matter. I think it would be really too presumptuous of me to turn down a Nobel, he said during a press conference. Their regulations and their processes are based on Alfred Nobel's will, and I don't think it's feasible to discuss that kind of thing with them. So, very noble of him to turn down a prize that would not allow it to be shared with his coworkers, and that's how science should be done. I mean, you should definitely give credit where credit is due, and not just try to grab credit. And when I think about that, I always think of the AIDS story. So you remember the issue there, Tim?
Oh, yeah.
Between Luc Montagnier in France and our good, excuse me.
Oh yeah, go ahead. You're going to say it.
What?
I'm sorry, I was talking to myself.
Okay. All right. Okay. Well, now I'm gonna forget the guy who caused all the controversy.
Gallo, wasn't it?
Gallo, right? Thank you. Yeah, Robert Gallo. Yeah. So very different story there, where Robert Gallo literally stole the HIV virus from the French and then claimed that he discovered it. So thank goodness most of the scientists out there do not take that approach. They're very willing to share and realize the importance of collaboration as opposed to working as just an individual.
And of course, great HBO movie, older movie, and The Band Played On, which kind of documented the AIDS epidemic and really did talk about what Gallo did.
Yeah, it did, and that is a good movie. By the way, those of you that want to see a star-filled docudrama,
Yes.
That's the one. I mean, you can't believe the number of stars that are in that movie.
It was loaded. Yep.
But anyway, I want to jump back to this issue of funding. Okay, so if you look at in terms of real dollars, where the current NIH budget is now as compared to where it was in the 1960s. And the reason I point out the 1960s is not because I'm that old, but because a lot of people look back on that era as as the most recent golden age of scientific discovery. The structure of DNA had just been described, a couple years earlier, and then the genetic code was deciphered, protein synthesis became understood, and of course we had all the huge breakthroughs in engineering feats, reaching the moon ultimately as a result of those. We had numerous vaccines developed during that time. Measles, mumps, rubella, for example, all developed during that time. The Sabin polio vaccine during that time. So it really was considered the golden age of discovery. And why was that? Because there was abundant funding. The American university was definitely the envy of the world at that time. And right now, if we look at real dollars, you guys want to take a guess as to where we are in terms of that funding from the 60s?
Percentage-wise?
Yeah, percentage-wise?
30%.
I was going to say 38.
Well, that's a little low, thank goodness. It's 42.
42.
Skeptics.
Oh,
42,
38, you're right.
Well, yeah.
Statistically, that's right in there.
if you were playing Price is Right tape, you would have been good. You know, with you made a very close guess without
Yeah.
going over it, right?
Mhm.
So, you know, here we are at a 38%, or excuse me, 42% budget level of where we were in the 1960s. And, you know, people wonder why we don't have more young people going into science. Well, frankly, it's almost impossible. You can't get any money to you know, do original research. So that has got to change, and I'm hoping with a new administration, maybe we can finally get that turned around, heading in the right direction here.
And don't you think, Dr. Brad, that's even diluted down more if you look at all the potential areas that money, science research areas that money could go into? I guess I'm assuming that there's probably, you know, more branches of science research that you can funnel that money into, maybe than compared in the 60s, but maybe I'm wrong.
Allow me to play devil's advocate here for a second. We're
Yeah,
talking
go
about
ahead.
university funded research, correct?
Right.
Yes,
What's the difference between the 60s and now as the percentage going to universities versus private corporations and private research? Is there a
right.
lot more money going privately now for drug companies? Are they spending a lot more now? And I do understand that if they are primarily profit driven, but I'm wondering what the percentages are there.
Right. So in terms of government funding, you know, realize, of course, that private industry typically does not get very much of that. You know, there is some money available. I know that because I've worked on both sides of the aisle. I was in the biotech industry for a while, but I spent most of my career in the academic world. But the other issue, of course, is that with private industry, what's the goal of private industry research?
Be the one that discovers it, and you're not going to be sharing any information with anybody else, because you want to be the one that reaps the reward from that discovery.
Right, and of course everything has to be product driven, right?
Right.
So if what you're doing isn't going to result in a saleable product, then you're going to be told to move on to something else. And so what gets lost is the value of basic scientific research.
Yes.
And every time, you know, we've had major breakthroughs, when we've truly made the big advances in science, it's been due to basic scientific research. And then, of course, once you have that, then you find the offshoots. You know, then you find the new ways to utilize those discoveries.
Right, and it's been a long time now since the funding for just research, so that we just understand things, could go on. You know, like you said, Dr. Brad,
Research for knowledge, not profit, right?
Right.
Correct. Yeah,
And
absolutely.
for grants, you have
Joy
to.
of discovery.
Yeah, so grant writing, you're actually almost a fairy tale storyteller, because you have to make some connection to some human benefit or whatever it might be to compete for those dollars.
Yeah, now, of course, in some instances, it's easy. I mean, if you're studying a virus that's a major human pathogen,
Right.
it's easy to identify what the end goal should be. Understanding it well enough to control it, right? I mean, that's in essence the goal. But for example, just take my virtual background here. So if you're an astronomer, how do you justify needing you know, expensive telescope time via a grant to you know, look at the Eagle Nebula, you know, which is what we're looking at behind me here. And of course, there have been a huge number of just fabulous discoveries that have come out of those observations. But you know, are we going to be able to immediately apply those to our everyday lives? Well, you know, probably not.
And again, you go back to, and I think you kind of alluded to this a little bit too, that the countless numbers of serendipitous discoveries that you know, came out of just doing basic research. You were you're looking, trying to answer one question, and all at once, bam, something pops up that's becomes a major discovery that you weren't even looking for.
Yeah, and then science history is filled with that.
Yes.
So yeah, absolutely. So anyway, Nobel Prizes have been started to be awarded for 2020. And it's nice to see 3 virologists getting recognized, being a virologist myself.
Right.
So anyway, always
You mentioned
nice.
the CRISPR.
Right.
Nobel.
Yeah. Now that was the Nobel Prize for chemistry. Was the CRISPR system, which is again for our viewers, it's a means of introducing very precisely genomic changes within a cell. And the ultimate idea, of course, would be to be able to correct the genetic mutations in individuals that suffer from a particular genetic disease. And so that's always been the geneticist's ultimate dream, is being able to do that. And we're literally right there to make that a reality now through this technology. And so maybe we did a show on CRISPR a while back, but now that it's won a Nobel, maybe we'll have to come back to it and discuss that a little bit. All right, I think we'll go ahead and take our first break. So we'll be right back with some more Sounds Reasonable.
Everything that brought me alive. Oh, we're all like monsters, playing with the monsters. They brought me alive, but got no alibi. It's a lover's fight without an alibi. Took my innocence without an alibi.
And we're back with more Sounds Reasonable on October 11th, 2020. Right-wing violence, sponsored by white supremacy groups and others, is on a huge upswing in the United States. Groups such as the Boogaloo Boys and the Proud Boys, both recent stories on Sounds Reasonable, by the way, are gaining membership thanks in no small part to the encouragement of our current president. During the debate between himself and Vice President Biden, Trump makes the statement of stand down, stand by, literally telling groups such as these to be ready to act should he lose the election. It is no wonder that a plot recently foiled by undercover work of the FBI to kidnap the governor of Michigan was uncovered. Tate has the story, so Tate, please fill us in.
I think to begin, we need to understand what's going on in these people's minds. The Boogaloo Boys, most recently the Wolverines. When I say tyranny, what comes to mind for you guys? Korean dictator tying people to missiles before firing them off? Maybe?
Sure.
Something along those lines?
Drug lords.
For the Wolverine Watchmen, the militant militia group of Michigan, they hold the belief that the COVID lockdown measures constitute tyranny. That's why they were planning on kidnapping Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer. The FBI said that they also planned to hold a trial for her for treason, and then they were going to execute her because she was locking things down. Excuse me. They wanted to start a civil war with all of this. That's how far they were willing to go with this. I believe it was 13 of them. In their minds, a quarantine is akin to a forced imprisonment and an infringement on their civil liberties. That, and this is funny, but it's not. One of their complaints, according to the FBI, is that gyms are closed. Gyms. They're upset gyms are closed. So let's, I don't know, kidnap the governor. So they held meetings over the summer to gather tactical weapons because of this, to make bombs, to blow up police cars, and to try to get over 200 people together so that they could kidnap the governor. Again, which was foiled, thankfully. The Wolverine Watchmen are just part of a larger number of militant groups in Michigan. Amy Cooter, who's a senior lecturer at Vanderbilt University, has been studying militias for over a decade. And she says that, quote, Michigan has always been a hotbed for militia activity. She says that militias are pretty uniform in their belief in the Second Amendment rights and limited government and not telling you when to close a gym. Of course, I added that last part. On top of all that, we have a sitting president, as you mentioned, who tweeted out, "Liberate Michigan." And he continually says that only he can save the Second Amendment. Only he can keep your guns from being taken away. I have personally received at least 3 flyers in the mail from his campaign stating that if he doesn't get reelected, our guns will be taken away. I would also like to note that I don't have any guns, but I keep getting these in the mail. I'm a firm believer in the Second Amendment, but don't get me started. That's the kind of rhetoric that is lending itself to the recent increase in militant activity and the ones that lean towards violence. And that's not just my view. Experts say that the rise of social media, increased collaboration with white supremacy and conspiracy groups, which Trump is not saying that he doesn't like their support, and fears that the presidential election isn't going to be legitimate, are helping fuel all this furor, if you will. But no, not for all militias. In fact, there was some backlash in some of them about Trump's policies recently. Most notably, when he talked about the use of military force against civilians during the riots over the summer. They didn't like that because that is truly an infringement. It didn't sit so well with some of the militias that he spoke about bringing up the 1807 Insurrection Act. Another example came when a recent article that was written by Amy Cooter, who I just mentioned about being the one who knows all about this. She talked about seeing several right-wing organizations openly encouraging members to support Black protesters on Facebook recently. So that, at least, is a positive. So how many of these militant militias are out there? The Southern Poverty Law Center identified 181 extreme anti-government militias in the United States just last year. The Anti-Defamation League reports an increase in far-right violence over the past couple of years. Now, to be fair, data does show that acts of violence have been mostly carried out by people who carry a lot of the militia beliefs, but aren't actually members. They tend to be individuals, sometimes people that the militias actually don't want anything to do with because they're batshit crazy, as shows in some of their actions. Militias are in every state, including Nebraska. I wanted to do some research on this yesterday. There's a website called My Militia that I found. It's a Nebraska-based forum for militia members where they talk and recruit militia members. In fact, at the top of the screen, I found a post from a group called 111% Militia that literally read like a job listing. Here's how it went. Are you ready to join a national group? Ready to work with patriots across the country, wishing to achieve the same goal? Are you ready to train and actually work towards making a difference? We strive to protect our communities and, furthermore, country. We train in a multitude of different areas and have roles for anyone wishing to join. Sound like something you would be interested in joining? That was literally what was on their webpage, talking about joining the militia. So I went to the website to learn more. The website talks about how our country is under attack from within and, the predictable stuff, again, about tyranny. It also goes on to talk about how well they are trained in combat, tactical, and medical. They say that they will always uphold the law. That is stated right there on the website, and that kind of caught my attention. But then I saw the rest of that sentence, as long as that law doesn't infringe upon the rights granted by the Constitution. That's always the catch. That's always open to interpretation, that as long as remark. As we saw with the Wolverine Watchmen, that as long as extended to not letting them go to the gym. So for the most part, militias tend to keep themselves and aren't dangerous, but we are living in a world where more and more people seem to not be living in the world. They imagine a reality where they think they're fighting and proven affronts to their liberties. I mean, just take a look at the QAnon followers who just last week we're talking about how Trump was kidnapped at Walter Reed and replaced with a body double by the deep state. True. They said that. The deep state, which also has Satanist vampires. Seriously, that is a belief of some of the QAnon followers. Should we be afraid? I wouldn't get too terribly worked up about it right now. Some will probably get loud and obnoxious after the election, but for the most part, I think they're going to be content with keeping to and venting among themselves. That's not to say that we shouldn't keep an eye out, because sooner or later, the crazy ones are going to think that they need to take action, just like Adam Fox did. He's a member of the Wolverine Watchdogs who was charged. When he talked about sending a bomb to the Michigan governor's office, he said, and I quote, "I just want to make the world glow, dude. We're just going to conquer everything, and it will all have to be annihilated." That was his quote. CAF, if you know what that means. So, I mean, right now, it just seems like social media is part of this, and the media in general, in getting us a little bit more riled up about it. Because if you look in the past, the militant militias, the way they're formed right now, have actually been pretty strong since the early 90s, and they've been building up since then. It's just, I think we're getting a little more newsworthiness about them because it has been politicized recently with our current president. Thoughts?
Yeah.
So
The way in which our president has fueled this rhetoric is what really what upsets me. I mean, for example, he was upset that Governor Whitmer did not thank him for the FBI uncovering this plot.
His FBI, his Department of Justice.
Right,
Those
exactly.
were his words.
Right, his FBI. I'm going, come on. I mean, what? Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Thank goodness you were in charge, or the FBI would have never uncovered this. Wow.
Where can I put a golden effigy of you in my courthouse?
if it wasn't for his pandemic, then we wouldn't have needed his FBI protection.
It's amazing how he owns some things and not others, right?
Yeah,
Exactly.
right.
But, you want to talk about how crazy things have gotten though. When some of those it's my understanding that at least 2 of the 13 that were arrested were some of the individuals that stormed the Capitol with their rifles in tow, and were standing on the balcony overlooking the legislative body, with their automatic weapons, and that was okay. But you know what was not okay? Bringing in signs. You cannot bring signs into the Michigan State Capitol because, get this, you might damage the paint. I'm not kidding. I am not kidding.
They'll be taping up your signs.
That is how crazy things are. It's okay to carry in, AR-15s or whatever the hell they're called, but it's not okay to bring in a sign because you might chip the paint.
Unlike bullets.
Yes, exactly. That is exactly what
everybody knows.
Unlike bullets.
You start spraying bullets around and they just start redecorating things. They put this over there, put a little chip here.
It's easier to putty in a bullet hole than to fix a paint chip, I guess.
I guess. I just couldn't believe that when I heard that. I said, no way, that can't be real. And it is.
Have you guys ever encouraged somebody who has been part of a militia? Have you ever met people like this face to face?
Not that I know of.
I know of at least 2 people that actually go to my gym that are members of a Nebraska militia. Frankly, I just kind of try to avoid them.
It's amazing because I know 1 or 2. And when you start talking politics and you start talking about the country and the Constitution, the Bill of Rights and everything, they will get really fired up, much like people of religion get fired up about the Bible. And I think in an email I sent to you, Brad, yesterday or a text, I mentioned that when I was doing this research, a lot of it came across as the Bible to very religious people is akin to the Constitution to militants. And they will treat it the same way and with the same fervor. and with the same anger and everything else. But what I was going to say was that I know a couple of these people, and they'll get worked up, but you start talking about anything else, and it's just fun. Hey, did you think that show was funny on CBS last night? And it's almost a compartmentalized part of their lives. Now, of course, that doesn't represent the ones who live off on the, out there in their bunkers and stuff. Those people are bad shit.
Did any demographics as far as what kind of ages are? I mean, are they younger, or they're still older? Or?
It's all ages. Of course, the ones that are most, the ones that are going to want to show up and stuff are going to be probably 25 through about 50-year-olds. But they indoctrinate just like you would say religion does. They've got kids who are in their teens. Just look at now I can't remember his name.
Oh, the 17-year-old?
Yes, the 17-year-old. Now I don't know if he was he part of a militia?
I don't think he was part of a militia, but I saw somebody very fervently defending him the other day on Facebook. And I'm, are you kidding me? I mean, here's somebody that crossed state lines, to engage in a riot, in essence, with the idea of I'm going to shoot people that I think are doing something wrong. And a 17-year-old trying to discern who's doing something wrong, who is in no way associated with law enforcement. I mean, are you kidding me? Jesus, me.
And women are just as.
We lost your sound, Tate. Tate, we lost your sound.
Okay.
And I'm back.
All right, there we go.
Sorry. I got this piece of equipment in my studio that is supposed to have been replaced. It's called an outboard sound card. And just every now and then it decides, hey, I'm not gonna let you talk.
You've said enough. You've said enough.
It's this multi-$100 piece of equipment that you can pick up and throw like a brick. I have to unplug the USB cord and plug it back in, and then all of a sudden it's happy again.
It's got to be a conspiracy. I don't see any other explanation.
I blame the deep state and their vampires sucking all the juice out of my Focusrite sound box. All right. Anyway.
Oh my goodness. Well, like I said before, I cannot wait for this election to be over just to see what's going to happen.
I don't think we're going to see as much violence as everybody's pretending there's going to be.
I really, really hope that is right. I would absolutely. I don't know what I would do, really.
I think, like with social media, where you have a bunch of people who feel empowered by being behind a keyboard and computer screen and talk a big game, that when they're faced with the reality of the situation and actually engaging with other human beings and having to, all right, we got to put a new guy in the office. If that happens, I'm not going to call it yet, but we're hoping Biden. And I think they're going to simmer down some. They'll step back from it and they'll mutter to themselves for the next 4 years.
Yeah, well, again, I really hope that's right. And wow, what a great job you did on that story, Tate. Thanks so very much.
Yep.
So we'll be back with more Sounds Reasonable after this break.
Messing with my head again. You had your heart set on me, but these feels, they come and go, and they come so easily. Tell me what it
And we're back with more Sounds Reasonable. As most people are aware by now, President Trump was infected by the COVID-2 coronavirus. After an incredibly short stay at Walter Reed Medical Center, he was let loose by his doctors to return to the White House. This was allowed even though he will continue to shed virus for at least 2 more weeks if he is an average responder. This aside, he is also on steroid medication, which gives mind-altering euphoria as a potential side effect. Tim has the story. So Tim, what is our super spreader president doing now? Oh, you're muted, Tim.
Deep state.
Sorry.
There we go.
Self-inflicted mute. Sorry. Thanks, Dr. Brad. I didn't want to be the only one that you couldn't hear. There has been a lot of talk this week about President Trump, the First Lady, and many of the White House contacting COVID-19. And a lot of talk centered around the actions and statements from President Trump. One of the statements in particular that President Trump tweeted, quote, "I feel better than I did 20 years ago." So many questioned the motive behind the statement. Was he trying to use the disease for political gain? Was he pandering to his COVID denying base? In the article I'm going to discuss, we will see why Trump is making these ignorant claims. The article comes from Business Insider on October 6th and is titled, "Trump is taking dexamethasone, a steroid that can give patients a false sense of recovery followed by a crash." President Trump started a course of the steroid dexamethasone on Saturday the 4th after a drop in blood oxygen levels. His doctor, Sean Connolly, said the drug treats the symptoms of COVID-19 by targeting the immune system, resulting in relief from fever and a boost in energy. The corticosteroid is typically reserved for the sickest patients, according to the World Health Organization. Despite the presumed severity of the patient's condition, he continues to project an image of good health. Quote, "I feel better than I did 20 years ago," Trump tweeted on Monday, announcing his discharge from the Walter Reed National Military Medical Center. That may have been the steroid talking. It's possible that the dexamethasone could give Trump a false sense of recovery, said Panagis Galasantos, MD and pulmonary physician at Johns Hopkins Bayview Medical Center. Everyone who gets steroids feels a little bit better, Santos told Business Insider. You get a steroid euphoria in addition to no fever and so forth. So yes, there will be a moment in time where he's going to feel like, oh, this is all behind me now. Along with the acute euphoria, side effects of the dexamethasone can induce high blood sugar, sleep impairment, and psychosis. Galileo Santos said that COVID-19 patients typically receive 6 milligrams of the steroid once per day for 10 days, as recommended based on the results of clinical trials in the UK. Quote, "It can make you feel good even though the disease is still pretty bad," according to Walter Wachter, chair of the Department of Medicine at the University of California, San Francisco. So even if Trump is feeling better since receiving the steroid, he still has more than 1 in 5 chance of dying of COVID-19, given that he required supplemental oxygen. The probability increases given his additional risk factors, such as age and weight, and he has had an even higher chance of needing intensive care if his respiratory symptoms worsen down the line. Wachter is quoted as saying, quote, "He's on a medicine, dexamethasone, that can kind of cover up some of the symptoms. It can make you feel good even though the disease is still pretty bad in you." it doesn't really change the risk that much. The benefits of taking a steroid like dextromethasone comes with the cost of potentially extending the course of the illness. Steroids target the immune system, not the virus itself, and a weaker immune system will take longer to fight off the virus. Galileo Santos said doctors prescribe steroids when the immune system is overly aggressive, such as in the case of cytokine storms that cause some coronavirus cases to turn deadly. Both the dextromethasone and remdesivir, I believe that's how it's pronounced, which is another, I'm sorry?
Remdesivir.
Thank you, remdesivir, another medication that Trump is taking according to his doctors, which is a broad spectrum antiviral medication originally developed to treat hepatitis C, which Dr. Brad talked about today, and are meant to curtail hyperactive immune response while still allowing the immune system to continue to do what it's supposed to do, fighting off the virus. If prescribed to healthy patients or those with mild symptoms, the dextromethasone can destroy a well-functioning immune system, Galileo Santos said. Trump's getting prescribed the steroid would suggest that he's sicker than his doctors are letting on. The National Institutes of Health recommended against giving dexamethasone to patients who don't need assistance breathing, stipulating that the steroid is recommended only for patients who need a ventilator or extra oxygen. Coronavirus symptoms can get better before they get worse, and even without a steroid putting a leash on the immune system. And doctors have observed the coronavirus patients getting better and then worse. Trump's top doctor told reporters on Monday that the president, quote, may not entirely be out of the woods for another week or so, despite although altogether optimistic evaluation of POTUS's condition. So Galileo Santos is quoted as saying, "This isn't meant to cure, it's just meant to keep things at bay. Even after 10 days of getting the treatment, he will still be fighting the infection and it could still do horrible things." And so the article I was reading also mentioned something about, he was also given some experimental drugs. So dug a little deeper. And one of the drugs taken by Donald Trump that has been touted as a potential cure for coronavirus was developed using human cells originally obtained from an elective abortion, a practice repeatedly denounced by the president and many of his supporters. The drug is a monoclonal antibody cocktail developed by Regeneron. The president received an 8-gram infusion under the, quote, compassionate use exemption when he was hospitalized over the weekend after testing positive for COVID-19. There is no cure for COVID-19 and the drug is not approved. The cells used to develop the drug are known as the HEX293T cell, which is a line of cells used in laboratories, have been used in laboratories for quite some time. The cells were originally derived from embryonic kidney after an elective abortion performed in the Netherlands in the 1970s. The HEK293 cells are one of the most commonly used cell lines in laboratories across a wide array of research. And then a little more information came from sciencemag.org, published, or the article published on October 5th, which is titled "Update. Here's what is known about Trump's COVID-19 treatment." So and it's a combination of antibiotics directed against a key protein. And so we're talking about, again, the cells, the HEK.
Antibodies, right? Antibodies.
Yeah, right, antibody, yeah. So it's the combination of two antibodies directed against a key protein of the SARS-CoV-2 virus. They bind to a region on the main surface spike protein that helps the virus attach to the adenosine converting enzyme 2 receptor on human cells. The targeted region of the surface spike protein is the receptor binding domain. One antibody comes from a human who had recovered from SARS-CoV-2 infection, a B cell that makes, it was a B cell that made the antibodies, was harvested from the person's blood, and the genes for the immune protein isolated and copied. The other antibody to the spike protein was produced in a line of mice, which were engineered to have a human immune system. In the statement released on October 2nd by the president's physician, he said that in addition to the antibodies, Trump has been taking zinc, vitamin D, famotidine, melatonin, which we did the article, Dr. Brad did the article on earlier, and a daily aspirin. The wording leaves unclear whether he is taking those substances before his diagnosed infection. Notably, the statement does not indicate whether Trump was or is taking the hydroxychloroquine and the which is, remember, the controversial anti-malarial drug that has been pushed by, well, put it nicely, quacks. So the famotidine, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, has been suggested to be a treatment for COVID-19, but it's also a popular heartburn remedy sold widely under the name Pepcid. A clinical trial testing it in hospitalized COVID patients in New York was not able to recruit enough patients to properly evaluate its impact. The Feinstein Institutes for Medical Research, which initiated the trial, released a statement on October 2nd, citing evidence that was helpful for COVID-19, but also saying, quote, "We have not yet provided efficacy or proved efficacy." The Institute says it's eagerly awaiting FDA approval of a trial that will evaluate whether it can help people who are not hospitalized. So Dr. Brad and Tate, what are your thoughts on Trump's treatments? It sounds like Trump was pretty high on the dexamethasone when he tweeted about how great he was feeling.
First thing that went through my mind was political ploy and that he probably doesn't have it. And I went down that route for about 5 minutes when I first heard about this. And then you start to realize how many people in his little party have all gotten it too. So it's probably true that he has it. I am curious at how he got so well. Obviously, I don't know all as much about the biomechanics as you two do and about the medications and stuff. But even so, even with the steroid high that could come from this, he seemed to be abundantly full of energy every time we see him. Then again, how often do we see him compared to how often we don't see him? You
Yeah,
can't
so
tell.
remember, he hasn't been that visible here for ever since his balcony appearance.
He was on Rush Limbaugh's show on Friday. He was on another show on Thursday. And what did he do on Saturday? He had some kind of meeting thing / rally. It wasn't a rally, but it was more of it was a smaller venue sort of thing. So he has been somewhat visible. Nobody gets that well from COVID in 1 week. That's what's blowing my mind with this. What else did they give him that they're not telling us about? Deep state.
Yeah, who knows?
Vampire blood.
Yeah, that could be.
He's a vampire now.
He had a complete transfusion.
I mean, drugs, of course, can make you feel awfully good when you really aren't in any type of decent shape at all. So who knows? I mean, maybe they give him a big dose of some type of stimulant right before he does these public appearances. I don't know. He was calling for Biden to be drug tested. I think we need to go the other way.
Yeah, I don't know. And again, if they're on a 10-day or 12-day or how many course of this, he's going to be feeling great for quite a while, during that time period. So it'll be interesting if they take him off of it, what the crash will look like.
Yeah,
I think we get it all.
Yeah, the other issue, and this is the one that I've been wondering if anything's going to come of it, is the 25th Amendment.
Oh, right.
Yeah, the 25th Amendment allows for someone that is incapacitated but not dead to be replaced by the order of succession, so to speak. So I suppose we'd just be trading one problem for another, since heads would jump in there at the moment. But I wonder if that's going to go anywhere. If we'll get enough medical information that that may become a reality.
Well, I could see. I mean, he would be kicking and screaming to go along with something like that. I think he would fight that.
By the way, where's Pence been for the last 4 days? He's the one that's been out of sight, I think.
And he's staying away because he doesn't want to get COVID. I think
I don't want to catch the hoax.
Yeah, I think that's.
Well, I don't know if you caught Mitch McConnell's recent comments, but he said, "I'm not going to the White House. They have a different set of standards over there that we don't adhere to here in the Senate."
No. Well, yeah,
by the way, did anybody think to check to see if that fly died after he landed on Pence's head the other night? Did anybody look at the?
That's the other thing I was thinking.
I think he would have just spontaneously combusted once he landed on him.
Yeah.
Have you guys ever been on any steroid? I mean, I had a sciatic nerve problem, and they put me on something, man. And I took the morning off from school, and then at noon, I come back at noon, and I took that, and man, I was like, oh my God, what's going on? It was so, put me on I was getting buzzed off taking that. And I'm not used to taking any, I don't take any.
Does it do steroids increase endorphin production?
I don't remember what it was. I wish I could remember what it was, but I was feeling kind of buzzed.
I can tell you what the effect is on mental capacity. I just know what it does to the immune system, and it is an immunosuppressant. So my advice is up the dosage.
Yeah.
Let's hope no militant groups are listening.
We might get some comments.
Right, maybe we'll...
Finally.
Well, anyway, gosh, Tim, thanks so much for putting that story together.
Yep.
And we'll just have to wait and see how it goes here over the next 3 weeks or so.
I should make a real quick comment, because I had some help. I had an assistant researching, finding some information for me. So I'd like to thank Catherine for helping me out, and she did a good job. I've tried to talk her to come in and being a guest speaker, but she's too shy, I guess. So I don't think she believed I was going to mention that she helped me on researching some info, but I fooled her. I did mention it.
Well, good enough. Always good to have a little help, especially from family. So
you bet.
All right, we'll take our final break and be back with the crazy story of the week.
Whoops. I don't think, hang on, I don't think I selected the right. There we go. You seeing it all right?
There we go.
I'm feeling so hollow, don't you know? And don't you know? I'm living in shadow.
We're back with our crazy story of the week. Sex. Sex with a satanic dominatrix. Not exactly what comes to mind when you think about a Catholic priest. Typically, they aren't interested in that type of thing since they are the wrong sex and a consenting adult. Our crazy story comes from New Orleans, from Pearl River Church, also known as Saints Peter and Paul Catholic Church. The title of the article is Priest Recorded Having Group Sex on Altar of Pearl River Church, Police Say, 3 Arrested. And was authored by Ramon Antonio Vargas and Sarah Pagonis from the Times-Picayune on October 8, 2020. The lights inside St. Peter's and Paul Roman Catholic Church in Pearl River were on later than usual on September 30th, so a passerby stopped to take a closer look. Peering inside, the onlooker saw the small parish's pastor, half naked, having sex with 2 women on the altar, according to court documents. The women were dressed in corsets and high-heeled boots. There were sex toys and stage lighting and a mobile phone, as well as a separate camera, were mounted on tripods recording it all. You know what? I'm thinking about becoming a priest these days. The eyewitness took a video and called the Pearl River Police, who arrived at the church and viewed that recording. Officers then arrested the Reverend Travis Clark, pastor of Saints Peter and Paul since 2019, on obscenity charges. Now, one may think that there really wouldn't be something like that in New Orleans.
Oh.
But anyway, the Archdiocese of New Orleans announced the priest's arrest October 1st, but would not give specifics about why he was arrested, nor would the police. New details, however, have emerged in court filings that paint a lurid picture of a priest recording himself engaged in sexual role-playing while desecrating a sacred place within the church. Public records additionally show that one of the women, Mindy Dixon, 41, is an adult film actor who also works for hire as a dominatrix. On a social media account associated with Dixon, a September 29th post says she was on her way to the New Orleans area to meet another dominatrix and defile a house of God. Dixon and Melissa Chang, 23, were booked on the same count as Clark, 37. Police said the charge stems from obscene acts that occurred on the altar, which is clearly visible from the street. The arrest marked the latest scandal to befall the Archdiocese of New Orleans after a different North Shore priest, the Reverend Pat Whittingley, reportedly disclosed on October 1st to Archbishop Gregory Almond that he had sexually abused a minor in 2013. Amon removed Whittingley from public ministry last week and added him to the Archdiocese list of clergy whom the church believes have been credibly accused of molestation. Clark, who was ordained in 2013, had recently been named chaplain of Pope John Paul II High School in Slidell, in addition to his duties at Saints Peter and Paul. At the high school, he succeeded Whittingley, who had resigned from that position this summer over inappropriate text messages sent to a student. Pope John Paul II's principal on Tuesday sent a letter to school parents criticizing Amon for waiting until last week to tell him that Whittingley had been under investigation for those texts since February. The archdiocese announced it had suspended Clark from ministry the day after he was arrested. Attempts to contact Clark, Chen, and Dixon weren't immediately successful. However, all three have bonded out of jail pending the outcome of the case. The archdiocese would not comment Thursday on Clark's arrest, saying authorities were investigating the matter. In Roman Catholic tradition, the altar is among the most sacred of church spaces, serving as the focal point of Mass and the place where a priest consecrates the Eucharist during the sacrament of Holy Communion. According to church law, known as canon law, when sacred places are violated, they must be repaired by penitential rite before they can be used again in the Mass. Days after Clark's arrest, Eamon went to Saints Peter and Paul and performed a ritual to restore the altar's sanctity. Now, I wonder if that included Clorox wipes or exactly what was needed here. However, we have an update. Now, amid news that a Pearl River priest was caught recording himself in group sex with two dominatrices on his church altar, and enraged Archbishop Gregory Almond on Friday characterized the priest's action as demonic and said he had the altar burned.
So it was beyond cleansing.
Exactly. It is a very rough time right now to be a Catholic in the Archdiocese of New Orleans, to say the least, Amon said in a video message addressed to parishioners and posted on the Archdiocese website in response to questions from WWL television. Well, coming to a theater near you soon, I suppose.
That had all the hallmarks of the beginning of a good porno. You know, I don't know how familiar you are with the Eucharists of the Catholic Church, but I was brought up Catholic, and when you were describing the scene, first I did this, and then I thought in my head, I said, this sounds like somebody going up, like the dominatrix is approaching the priest and him going, body of Christ, and them going, no, your body. And then it takes over from there and it just goes wild.
Here, let me place that wafer right here in this little spot.
Not in my mouth, and not the wafer.
I think you confused the Eucharist with the uterus.
Yeah.
I think that's what happened.
Oh my gosh. When I saw this, I said, well, this has got to go on. I mean, oh wow.
At least it was adult. So it wasn't.
Exactly. So yeah, that's the interesting thing of this. Now, part of the story that I didn't include is that the attorney for the priest is saying that he shouldn't be charged with anything. You know, there's no obscenity law broken here because they were not actually visible from the street. This guy had to stop, pull up to the church, and then go and peep into a window like a peeping Tom.
Charge the guy with being a peeping Tom.
So I'm not sure who's really more guilty of a crime, shall we say? You know, the guy that actually peeped in on him, or
well, actually, yeah, you're right. From a legal standpoint, they're consenting adults, right?
Right.
Exactly. They're consenting adults. So I don't think there's a crime here.
Unless,
in my view, that's how. So I don't know.
Unless they consider the church a public place.
Yeah, not during non-visiting hours. I wouldn't think you would consider that. I don't know.
All I know is I'm going to have to review the tape. Make a criticism. You're going to have to.
I want that tape release.
I'm going to need both cameras for the video.
Yep.
Some time to myself.
Yeah, that's something.
Well, anyway, that wraps up the crazy story of the week. So, if you have enjoyed our program, please pass the word to your friends and associates, believers and non-believers alike. Again, just a reminder that you are welcome to post questions and comments on our Facebook page. Remember, there is a big difference between having good reasons for what one accepts to be true and having bad ones. Incidentally, this is the only distinction one needs to become a strict atheist. This has been Dr. Brad for Tate and Tim saying so long.